There is an ancient farming system in the high Andes that produces 4 times the yield of modern agriculture. It requires no pumps, no pipes, no irrigation equipment. The fields haven't been watered in 800 years. NASA satellites photograph the geometric pattern stretching across 120,000 hectares. Archaeologists confirm the system fed 500,000 people. And today, rebuilding these fields would violate water rights laws in nearly every country on Earth. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how this system works and why it can quadruple your yields without buying a single product. If hidden agricultural knowledge fascinates you, you're in the right place. Subscribe and hit the bell. Welcome to our exploration of the buried past. Travel to the shores of Lake Titicaca in Peru and Bolivia. You're standing at 12,500 feet above sea level. The air is thin, the nights are brutal. Temperatures drop below freezing 300 nights a year. Every agricultural textbook says this environment sits at the absolute margin of food production. Crops should fail here. Frost should kill everything. The growing season should be too short and too cold for any meaningful harvest. Now look at the landscape from a small plane. Below you, stretching to the horizon, geometric patterns emerge. Raised platforms run in parallel lines. Dark water fills the channels between them. The patterns repeat for miles in every direction. This isn't natural. This is engineering. This is the Waru Waru system, and it sustained one of the most sophisticated civilizations in pre-Columbian America. Clark Erickson of the University of Pennsylvania spent decades documenting these fields. His aerial photography in 1988 revealed the true scale of what the Tiwanaku civilization built. 120,000 hectares of raised field agriculture. That's nearly 300,000 acres. For comparison, that equals the entire agricultural output of a small American state. Built without metal tools, maintained without machinery, productive without synthetic inputs of any kind. The basic structure looks almost primitive at first glance. Farmers constructed raised planting platforms between 15 and 50 feet wide. The platforms extended 150 to 650 feet long. They elevated the planting surface between 1.5 and 5 feet above the surrounding terrain. Water filled the channels between the platforms, creating a network of shallow canals 6 to 12 feet wide. No pump moved this water. No pipe distributed it. Seasonal flooding from Lake Titicaca and mountain runoff filled the channels naturally. The water simply stayed there. It didn't irrigate the crops in the conventional sense. The roots of the potato plants on the raised platforms never touched the canal water. If you're finding value in this, hit the like button. Let's uncover what the water was actually doing. Visitors seeing the system for the first time ask the obvious question. If the water doesn't irrigate the plants, what exactly does it do? The answer required modern thermal physics to fully understand. Researchers from the Smithsonian Institution published their findings in 1989. Alan Kalata and Charles Ortloff placed temperature sensors throughout rehabilitated Waru Waru fields. They measured air temperature above the raised platforms. They measured water temperature in the channels. They recorded data during freezing nights when conventional crops would die. The results revealed engineering genius hidden behind apparent simplicity. Water has an exceptionally high specific heat capacity. It absorbs thermal energy efficiently and releases it slowly. During daylight hours, sunlight warmed the canal water to 60 or 68 degrees Fahrenheit. When night fell and air temperatures plummeted, the water retained its heat. The canal water remained 7 to 11 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than the frigid air surrounding it. That temperature difference changed everything. Warm water radiates infrared heat. The canals functioned as heating elements, running alongside every planting bed. The crops on the raised platforms received thermal radiation from the water on both sides. The research team documented that air temperatures on the raised platforms stayed 3.5 to 7 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than the surrounding landscape. 3.5 to 7 degrees doesn't sound dramatic until you understand what frost does to a potato plant. At 28 degrees Fahrenheit, ice crystals form inside the plant's cells. The cells rupture. The plant dies within hours. A field that experiences 25 degrees produces nothing. A field that stays at 30 degrees survives. The Waru Waru system created a microclimate warm enough to prevent frost damage during 300 freezing nights per year. The thermal battery effect alone would justify calling this system sophisticated engineering. But the Tiwanaku farmers built something even more elegant. The channels also functioned as nutrient production facilities. Algae and aquatic plants grew in the standing water throughout the growing season. Organic matter accumulated in the canal sediments. Researchers who analyzed this sediment found nitrogen and phosphorus concentrations 3 to 5 times higher than in the surrounding soils. Farmers periodically dredged the canals and spread the dark, nutrient-rich sludge over the raised platforms. The system manufactured its own fertilizer. No external inputs required. No amendments purchased. No synthetic nitrogen produced in factories burning natural gas. The channels grew fertilizer while protecting crops from frost. Fish thrived in the canal water. Aquatic invertebrates multiplied. The system produced protein alongside carbohydrates. A single integrated design achieved what modern agriculture accomplishes only through separate industries operating independently. Heating systems, irrigation infrastructure, fertilizer production, and aquaculture operations. The Waru Waru system unified all 4 functions in one elegant structure. Subscribe right now, because what comes next is the data that should have changed the world, and the reason it didn't. The productivity data silenced any remaining skepticism. Ignacio Garaycochea led agricultural rehabilitation research for the Peruvian government in 1986. His team reconstructed Waru Waru fields in the community of Huata, near Lake Titicaca. They planted potatoes on the raised platforms using traditional methods. They planted potatoes in adjacent flat fields using conventional methods. They measured harvest weights precisely. The rehabilitated Waru Waru fields produced 8 to 14 tons of potatoes per hectare. The adjacent conventional fields produced 1 to 4 tons per hectare. The ancient system outperformed modern agriculture by 200 to 400%, without tractors, without synthetic fertilizers, without chemical pesticides, without mechanical irrigation, just water sitting in channels, releasing heat during freezing nights, and accumulating nutrients in dark sediments. These numbers should have revolutionized global agriculture. They didn't. The knowledge remained buried in technical journals read only by specialists. The system that fed 500,000 people for over 1,000 years barely appears in agricultural education curricula anywhere on Earth. The Spanish arrived in the 1530s. They brought European diseases that killed 80 to 90% of the indigenous population within 2 generations. They disrupted the communal labor systems that maintained the raised fields. Colonial administrators imposed European farming models on landscapes that European agriculture couldn't sustain. The Waru Waru system fell into abandonment. Channels filled with sediment. Platforms eroded. Within a century, the most productive farming system in the high Andes had nearly vanished. Modern legal structures created additional barriers. Water rights laws developed in Europe and North America assume individual landowners hold rights to specific quantities of water for specific uses. The Waru Waru system requires collective water management across multiple properties. Intentionally flooding fields violates water use regulations in most jurisdictions. Maintaining standing water in agricultural settings is classified as water waste in regions where every drop carries legal and economic weight. The economics also work against traditional knowledge in subtler ways. Synthetic fertilizer represents a $200 billion global market. Irrigation equipment generates over $10 billion annually. Agricultural chemicals constitute a $250 billion industry. These corporations fund research, support extension programs, advertise in farming publications, and lobby governments on agricultural policy. Waru Waru eliminates the need for the products these industries sell. A farmer using raised field agriculture doesn't buy fertilizer. The system manufactures nutrients in canal sediments. A farmer using thermal mass frost protection doesn't buy greenhouse heating equipment. The water provides warmth for free. No corporate entity profits from farmers applying freely available knowledge to freely available water and soil. No patent protects the Waru Waru design. No trademark restricts who can use the name. The techniques exist in the public domain. Climate change adds a bitter irony to this suppression. Global temperatures are rising, but thermal instability hits high-altitude regions hardest. Mountain farmers worldwide report increasingly unpredictable frost events. Growing seasons shift. Traditional planting calendars no longer match actual weather patterns. The conventional response involves more technology purchases, more greenhouse construction, more heating systems, more climate-controlled environments requiring energy inputs. The Waru Waru system provided climate adaptation through passive thermal engineering 1,500 years ago. It required no external energy. It operated on basic physics that works identically regardless of how climate patterns change. Water absorbs heat during the day. Water releases heat at night. This principle worked in the year 500. It works today. It will work in 2100. Not everyone has abandoned the ancient knowledge. Since the 1980s, small organizations have worked with indigenous communities to rebuild Waru Waru fields. Thousands of hectares have been restored in Peru and Bolivia. Farmers report improved food security and reduced vulnerability to frost damage. They explain how the system produces year after year without requiring cash expenditure on inputs. The principles apply beyond the high Andes. Anywhere water and soil exist together, thermal mass effects can moderate temperature extremes. Raised beds with adjacent water channels provide frost protection in any climate where frost threatens crops. The scale adapts from landscape transformation to backyard implementation. A gardener anywhere on Earth can apply this physics. No purchase necessary. No subscription unlocks the techniques. No corporation holds rights to water that absorbs heat and releases it slowly. The engineering that fed 500,000 people for 1,000 years belongs to anyone willing to learn and apply it. 800 years of continuous productivity, 400% yield improvements over conventional methods, zero irrigation infrastructure, zero synthetic inputs, zero energy requirements beyond sunlight warming water during the day. The raised platforms still visible from aircraft above Lake Titicaca represent something more than archaeological curiosity. They represent proof that human agricultural knowledge peaked in certain respects before the Industrial Revolution began. They represent evidence that ancient does not always mean inferior. The question worth asking is this: why does this knowledge remain hidden? Why don't agricultural universities teach Waru Waru alongside modern irrigation engineering? Why don't climate adaptation programs prioritize passive thermal systems over energy-intensive alternatives? Why do development agencies promote purchased inputs when superior free alternatives exist in the historical record? The answers have to do with money, with institutional structures, with assumptions so deeply embedded in modern thinking that most people never question them. The water in those Andean channels released heat during freezing nights for 15 centuries. The physics never changed. The engineering never failed. The knowledge never fully disappeared, despite sustained efforts to replace it with profitable alternatives. Now you know what existed. Now you know why it worked. Now you know why you probably never heard about it before today. If this story changed how you see the ancient wisdom buried in the earth, subscribe and hit that like button. We're uncovering the history they tried to bury. Let's grow the future together.